You know those picture-perfect suburbs where every lawn looks like it was mowed by angels and every neighbor waves like they're in a toothpaste commercial? That was Cedar Grove Estates when I first rolled in with my beat-up moving truck. White picket fences, gleaming mailboxes, all the same shade of community-approved beige, and a big HOA sign that read, Pride, Harmony, and Rules We Actually Enforce. I'm Tyler Brooks, ex-Army, 42, just looking for a quiet acre where I could raise a few goats, keep some chickens, and let my German Shepherd mix, Bandit, run off the last of the sand from my boots. No drama. No drama at all. Or so I thought. Deborah Hargrove, everyone called her Debbie, ran the HOA like it was her personal kingdom. She was the type of woman who showed up to block parties in a crisp polo shirt embroidered with President in gold thread, clipboard always tucked under one arm like a royal scepter. Her smile never quite reached her eyes. Neighbors would lean over the fence and whisper, "Just stay on Debbie's good side, Tyler. She's got the whole board in her pocket." I laughed it off at first. I'd faced worse than a clipboard in the desert. How bad could suburbia be? The first fine arrived in my mailbox 2 weeks after I moved in, $1.75 for unauthorized livestock odor. My 3 goats were apparently offending the olfactory harmony of Cedar Grove. I paid it. Figured it was a welcome tax. Then came the citation for my chicken coop being visually disruptive to community aesthetics. The coop was painted the exact beige they demanded. Next month, it was the mailbox flag, too festive. I started keeping a folder. Every letter, every time-stamped photo of my yard looking exactly like the HOA handbook said it should. I didn't argue. I just smiled back at Debbie when she waved from her golf cart during her daily inspections. "We all want the same thing, Tyler," she'd call out in that syrupy voice. A perfect neighborhood for our perfect families. Bandit was my shadow. Big, loyal, gentle as a lamb unless something threatened what was his. One crisp Saturday afternoon, I was out back repairing a fence when I heard the yowling. Debbie's prized Persian, Princess, had slipped through the hedge again, something she'd done before without consequence because, well, Debbie's rules apparently didn't apply to Debbie. Princess went straight for my chickens like a furry missile. Bandit, chained to his run the way the HOA required, lunged once. Just once. A blur of teeth and fur. Princess didn't make it. I stood there holding Bandit's collar while he trembled, the poor cat limp on the grass. My stomach dropped. I loved animals. This wasn't how any of this was supposed to go. Debbie showed up 10 minutes later, perfectly composed, not a hair out of place. No screaming, no tears. Just that same polished smile. "These things happen, Tyler," she said, patting my arm like I was a child who dropped an ice cream cone. "Nature can be cruel. I'm not angry. Really. Let's not let one little accident ruin our lovely community." She even offered to let me bury Princess in her rose garden. I apologized 6 different ways, offered to pay vet bills, cremation, whatever she wanted. She waved it off. "Focus on keeping that homestead of yours safe, dear. Accidents have a way of snowballing." That night, I couldn't sleep. Something in her eyes when she said snowballing felt like a warning wrapped in cotton candy. I doubled the cameras around the property, the cheap ones I'd bought after the first fine, just in case. For the next few weeks, everything went eerily quiet. No new citations. Debbie started dropping by with homemade cookies, asking innocent little questions. "How much fuel do you keep for that generator, Tyler? Barns can go up so fast in this heat." She'd laugh like it was the funniest joke. "And those metal cages you built for Bandit, do they hold up in extreme conditions?" I told myself she was grieving in her weird control freak way. I smiled, thanked her for the cookies, and kept documenting every single visit. But the latch on my fuel shed started coming undone at night. A city inspector I never called showed up claiming HOA compliance checks. Neighbors mentioned seeing Debbie chatting with strangers near my driveway, laughing like old friends. I stayed calm. I'd learned in the Army that patience is a weapon. So I upgraded the cameras, added audio, and waited. Little did I know the real storm was already brewing right under that perfect blonde bob. The cookies kept coming, each batch wrapped in a little bow that felt more like a noose every time. Debbie would lean on my fence, perfectly manicured nails tapping the wood, and steer every conversation back to my property like a guided missile. "You know, Tyler, with all those animals you've got, fire safety really should be your top priority," she'd say, tilting her head in that rehearsed concerned neighbor pose. I was reading about how quickly hay ignites. Scary stuff. Then she'd giggle, like we were sharing inside jokes instead of her listing every flammable thing on my land. I'd nod politely, offer her lemonade, and inside my gut was twisting tighter than Bandit's chain. One afternoon she brought her husband along, some spineless guy who just stood there nodding while she inspected my goat pen for community standards. "Bless your heart, Tyler, you really do try," she cooed. "But remember, we're all in this together. One weak link, and the whole neighborhood suffers." I almost laughed out loud. Weak link? I was the only one following every ridiculous rule while she let Princess roam free like the queen of the jungle. Bandit would whine from his run every time she appeared, ears flat, like he could smell the lie under all that perfume. I'd scratch his head and whisper, "Easy boy. We're playing the long game." The weird little things piled up like kindling. My irrigation timer mysteriously reset to flood the yard at 3 a.m., right after Debbie casually asked about my water bill. A contractor in an unmarked van showed up claiming he was checking property lines for the HOA. He bolted when I started filming. Mrs. Ellison from 2 streets over pulled me aside at the community mailbox one morning. "Watch your back, Tyler. Debbie's done this before. She ran the last family out over a fence color dispute. They lost everything." I thanked her but kept my mouth shut. I wasn't ready to show my cards yet. Meanwhile, life kept rolling. I fixed fences at dawn, fed the animals at dusk, locked Bandit in his reinforced run every night, even though he hated it. "Temporary, buddy," I'd tell him while he stared at me with those trusting brown eyes. Guilt over Princess still sat heavy in my chest, so I overcompensated. Extra treats for the goats, fresh straw, double-checking every lock. I told myself Debbie's sudden friendliness was just grief wearing a smiley face mask. People process loss differently. Some bake cookies. Some plot in the dark. But the night I caught her on the new camera circling my fuel shed at 2 a.m. changed everything. She wasn't carrying anything. Just pacing, phone flashlight sweeping the ground like she was memorizing every inch. The timestamp glowed red. I sat in my kitchen staring at the footage, coffee going cold. That was the moment the patience I'd been hoarding turned into something sharper. I copied everything to a hidden drive, backed it up to the cloud, and started sleeping with one eye open. Debbie thought she was the only one who knew how to play the long game. She had no idea I'd been studying her moves since day one. The HOA meeting that week was the usual circus. Debbie stood at the podium in her power suit, lecturing about maintaining our pristine standards. She slipped in a new proposed rule: livestock limited to 2 animals per household for odor control. Everyone knew it was aimed at me. I sat in the back row, quiet as always, but inside I was grinning. Because the day before, Mrs. Ellison had shown up on my porch after dark with a folder that was about to blow the whole perfect neighborhood wide open. She didn't waste words. "Debbie's got 20 breeding cats in her basement, Tyler. Commercial grooming tables, online sales, the works." She wrote the rule banning home businesses herself. And she's been skimming HOA dues for events that are really her spa trips. Photos, receipts, everything. Hypocrisy on a silver platter. I thanked Mrs. Ellison, locked the folder away, and waited for the right moment to drop it. But Debbie must have sensed the ground shifting. Because the very next morning, everything went to hell in the most literal way possible. I left early that day for feed and fencing wire, routine run into town. The sky was that perfect Carolina blue, the kind that makes you forget how fast life can flip. Halfway home, my phone blew up with neighbor alerts. Smoke in Cedar Grove. My foot slammed the gas before my brain caught up. That unique fear, the one that squeezes your lungs shut, hit me when I saw the black column rising exactly where my barn stood. Sirens wailed somewhere behind me, but fire doesn't wait for sirens. By the time I skidded into the driveway, the heat slapped me like a wall. Goats screaming, chickens scattering, the roar of flames eating everything I'd built. And there, silhouetted against the inferno like a movie villain who forgot to run, stood Debbie. One hand holding an empty gas can, the other loose at her side, that same calm smile curling her lips. Our eyes locked through the shimmer. "Actions have consequences, Tyler," she called over the crackle, voice steady as if she were reading meeting minutes. Maybe next time you'll think twice before taking something precious from someone. I wanted to charge her. Wanted to scream until my throat bled. But then I heard it. Bandit's raw, desperate howl coming from his run. The metal cage glowed red, smoke pouring out, my dog inside thrashing against the bars that had always kept him safe. I ran through flames that blistered my arms, fingers tearing at the superheated latch while Bandit's eyes found mine one last time. Still trusting, still believing I'd fix it like I always had. The lock gave. The structure buckled. And then silence. That soundless break inside me dropped me to my knees in the ash. Firefighters swarmed in, hoses blasting, voices shouting orders I couldn't hear over the ringing in my ears. Debbie had vanished like smoke. But my cameras hadn't. Every second of her stroll across my yard, every deliberate pour of gasoline, every satisfied glance back at the growing blaze was recorded in crystal-clear 4K. Mrs. Ellison's folder sat safe in my truck. The hypocrisy, the fraud, the breeding operation, all of it. Grief sharpened into something cold and precise. I handed the drive to the first detective on scene with hands that still shook. She did this. And I can prove it. The investigation kicked into high gear faster than I expected. Traffic cams caught Debbie's car leaving her house at the exact window the fire started. Gas station receipts showed her buying 2 full cans that morning. Cash, of course. Phone data placed her on my property for 43 minutes while I was gone. When officers knocked on her door, she answered with that trademark smile, clipboard nowhere in sight for once. There must be some misunderstanding, she said sweetly. They didn't misunderstand. They cuffed her right there on her perfect porch while neighbors peeked through blinds, finally seeing the queen without her crown. I didn't gloat. I just sat in the ruins that night, Bandit's empty collar in my hands, and felt the weight of every petty fine, every fake cookie, every veiled threat finally tipping the scales the other way. The twist that really broke her came 2 days later when Mrs. Ellison went public with the breeding photos. Turns out Debbie had been fining residents for excess animals while running her own illegal kitten mill for profit. The board that once bowed to her started turning on her like sharks smelling blood. Lawsuits piled up. HOA dues were frozen. And the fire marshal added felony arson, animal cruelty, and reckless endangerment to the list that was already longer than her rulebook. Court wasn't the dramatic showdown you see on TV. It was quieter, colder, and somehow more brutal because of it. I sat in the gallery in a simple button-down, arms still bandaged, and watched prosecutors lay out the timeline like bricks in a wall Debbie could never climb. The footage played on the big screen, her calm walk across my yard, the gas can swinging, the deliberate ignition at 3 separate points. No rage, no accident. Premeditated. The judge's face hardened with every frame. Debbie's lawyer tried the grief made her unstable angle. The courtroom actually chuckled when the prosecutor countered with Mrs. Ellison's evidence. 20 cats in climate-controlled crates, sales records on a laptop Debbie swore was just 4 community spreadsheets, and bank statements showing HOA funds funneled into her personal spa account. The defendant spent years preaching rules for everyone else, the prosecutor said, voice dripping with the same syrup Debbie used to use on me. Turns out the only rule she followed was do as I say, not as I do. When the verdict came, 12 years, no parole, full restitution, lifetime ban from any homeowners association in the state, Debbie finally cracked. That polished smile shattered. She looked small in the orange jumpsuit. The woman who once controlled an entire neighborhood reduced to begging the judge for mercy she'd never shown anyone else. Her house went into foreclosure. The HOA dissolved under a cascade of member lawsuits. People who used to whisper, just stay on her good side, started shaking my hand at the grocery store like I'd slain a dragon. Rebuilding took time. Friends showed up with lumber. New neighbors helped clear the charred remains. I got Bandit a quiet corner under the new oak I planted, a simple stone that reads, loyal to the end. The goats came back first, then the chickens. Some nights I still wake up smelling smoke, but the nightmares are shorter now. Strength grew in the places grief hollowed out. Clarity, too. I learned that power only works when people believe you have it. Once that illusion burns away, you're just another person standing in the ashes of your own choices. Every once in a while, I drive past Debbie's old place. Now a for sale sign, an overgrown lawn that would have earned her a fine back in the day. I don't feel hate anymore. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing the woman who thought she could play God with other people's lives finally met rules she couldn't rewrite. The same system she weaponized turned on her the second real evidence showed up. Funny how that works. If you're watching this and you've got an HOA Karen in your neighborhood, document everything. Smile, nod, and build your case in the shadows. Because the moment they cross the line from petty to criminal, the same rules they love so much become the rope that hangs them. Justice doesn't always come fast, but when it does, it burns brighter than any fire they can start. Thanks for listening to my story. Drop your own HOA nightmares in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've ever lost a dog to someone else's ego, know this: the good ones never really leave. They just wait on the other side of the fence, tails wagging, ready to run again when the smoke finally clears. The last loose ends tied themselves up in the most poetic way possible. The new HOA board, elected by actual residents this time, voted to repeal half the ridiculous rules Debbie had championed. No more odor citations for livestock under 5 animals. No more beige-only mandates. People started painting their mailboxes bright colors, planting whatever flowers they damn well pleased, and the neighborhood actually felt alive. I got a formal apology letter from the association along with a check for damages that covered most of what insurance wouldn't touch. It wasn't about the money. It was the admission that the system she'd twisted had finally straightened itself out. Debbie tried one last Hail Mary from county jail, letters claiming the footage was doctored and that I'd somehow provoked the whole thing. The judge laughed it out of court in under 10 minutes. Turns out her phone records also showed texts to a shady contractor the week before the fire. Make sure it looks accidental. He's been asking too many questions. That sealed the aggravated arson charge nice and tight. Her husband filed for divorce the same week she got transferred to state prison. Last I heard, she was working laundry detail and learning that clipboards don't carry much weight behind bars. Me? I finished the new barn last month. Bigger, smarter, with fire suppression sprinklers I installed myself. Bandit's collar hangs on a hook by the door like a reminder. The goats have names now: General, Sergeant, and Private. The chickens free range without fear of surprise Persian attacks. And every sunrise I stand on the back porch with fresh coffee, watching the mist lift off the fields, and I feel something I never expected after all that smoke: peace. Real peace. The kind you earn when you refuse to kneel to someone who thinks they own the world just because they have a title. If there's a lesson in all this, it's that the quiet ones who document and wait aren't weak. We're patient. And patience, when paired with proof, is the most devastating weapon in any suburban war. Debbie thought her clipboard made her untouchable. Turns out the only thing untouchable was the truth once it finally caught fire. So if you're dealing with your own HOA nightmare right now, keep that folder growing. Keep those cameras rolling. And when the moment comes, and it always does, hand the evidence over with the same calm smile she used on you. Watch how fast their perfect little kingdom collapses. Thanks for sticking with me through the ashes, folks. Hit that like button if you want more stories from the front lines of suburban chaos. Subscribe so you never miss the next Karen takedown. And remember, in every quiet neighborhood, there's always one person who thinks the rules don't apply to them. Until the day they do. Stay safe out there. I'll see you in the comments.